Flight archery, going the distance. Flight archery refers to archery conducted for the sole purpose of seeing how far an arrow can be shot. It is a highly competitive form of archery, and it appears to have been very competitive for quite some time. Some cultures, in particular Korean and Turkish, placed a high value on being able to shoot far. Some devotees to historical and traditional archery may recall the story of the secretary to the Turkish ambassador. On July 1794, a Mahmud Effendi impressed onlookers in London, England, by shooting 482 yards. Mahmud reportedly remarked that Turkish flight archery standards were much higher and apologized for the poor performance. Not long after this, in 1798, Sultan Selim III supposedly managed to cast an arrow 972 yards. These are impressive feats. This video explores flight archery with an emphasis on traditional Turkish flight archery. Why flight archery? Before we delve into the specifics of flight archery, let us explore its background. Why would distance shooting become such a competitive and obsessed over form of archery? There are a few important considerations to make here. Just like in many other competitive endeavors, reach is important. Take, for example, the sport of boxing. If one of the competitor's arms are considerably longer, they would be able to hit their opponent and not be within reach of a counterpunch. The same concept surely was noticed and understood by early archers, particularly in a combat zone. If your archers could hit the enemy and not be within range of their archers, you were at a tactical advantage. This led to an arms race of sorts, with bowyers creating more powerful bows and archers requiring more strength to pull them. Traditional composite reflex bow design and technology reached their zenith within the Ottoman Empire. Being able to shoot great distances evolved into a competitive national sport, with the most competent archers acquiring much fame and recognition. The obsessive desire to cast an arrow the longest distance evolved over time, from the military use of the bow and arrow. Competitive flight archery has gained much popularity in recent times and is recognized as an official event by the World Archery Federation, the international federation for the sport of archery. Specialized flight archery equipment. In order to facilitate the cast of arrows to ever-increasing distances, flight archery enthusiasts have specially engineered equipment. This section of the video gives an overview of some of the specialized equipment developed with an emphasis on traditional Turkish archery gear. Arrows. First and foremost, the arrows used in distance shooting can be quite different from the arrows most archers are familiar with. Flight arrows are typically much smaller than other types of arrows. Being made purposefully small, the weight of the arrows can be significantly reduced. As a result, these arrows fly much farther than larger, heavier arrows shot from the same bow. Typically, flight arrows have a barreled design. The term barreled, as it refers to an arrow, implies that the middle of the arrow is wider than the ends. There is subtle yet discernible bulge in the center of the arrow, which gently tapers down towards the ends. As a result of this design, the arrows are more aerodynamic as well as lighter. Next, the fletching. The feathers are tiny in comparison to other arrow fletchings. For traditional Turkish flight arrows, parchment or feathers may be used. It can be quite rigid, yet is made exceptionally thin. Typically they are 2.5 inches long and 1/4 inch back towards the nock. Flight archery enthusiasts and competitors have been known to construct fletchings out of almost anything, including razor blades, floppy disks, and as of late 3D printed fletchings. Typically, flight arrows of the traditional Turkish variety are made from pine. Modern flight archers may use carbon, aluminum, or other modern materials. Anatomy of a Turkish flight arrows. The following is based on an examination of 37 Turkish arrows dated from the 1700s. The collection of arrows resides within the stone collection of the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. These arrows are the subject of study of Paul E. Klopsteg's book, Turkish Archery and the Composite Bow. The arrows are all slightly barreled, that is, they taper towards the ends and have slight bulge in the center. somewhat like a wooden barrel. Being constructed from conifer wood, they are all very straight and made to a high level of consistency. The tips of these flight arrows were typically bone, while the nocks are made from Brazil wood or goat's horn. Good arrow would be dense and straight-grained. The trees from which this wood would be obtained should be older than 10 years and cut down during its period of dormancy, aka winter. Nocks. Klopstad remarks in his work, the nock pieces were either separately glued to the shaft and well wrapped with sinew, or the nock was made of a single piece of hardwood or horn that had been glued to the shaft beforehand. Brazil wood was generally used, but this was varied with horn from the wild goat. The sides of the nocks were slightly bulbous, but never exceeded in diameter that of the shaft at its largest section. The sides or cheeks of the nock diminished in thickness towards the opening at the lips. The clearance between the lips were smaller than the width of the bottom of the nock in which the string rested. The corners of the lips at the inner sides of the nock were well rounded to facilitate nocking the arrow. The nock pieces were slightly yielding so that the nock in effect became a spring clip that snugly fitted the string and held the arrow securely in place. In general shape, the nock reminds one of a tulip blossom. The halves of the nocks are rounded with extremely fine sinew, being soaked in hot glue and wound around the nock halves. Once the sinew dries, it is cut where the nock accepts the string. This sinew winding adds considerable strength to the nock. Length. All arrows in this particular collection are all 24 inches in length, plus or minus about half an inch. Mr. Mahmoud Effendi, secretary to the Turkish ambassador in London, whom we mentioned earlier, shot arrows measuring 25 inches according to those who witnessed his shooting in 1794. Fletching. According to Klopstad, who took many details from an earlier work published in Constantinople in 1847 by a certain Mustafa Khani, several types of bird feathers were used for fletching. Commonly, feathers were taken from the swan, eagle, the white and spotted pigeon, and the cormorant. Pinion and tail feathers were used. However, for flight archery, only the inner vein of pinion feathers were used. The feathers would have been all made from the same wing, either all from the left wing or right. After the nocks are attached, the vanes or feathers are placed 120 degrees apart on the shaft, just in front of the nock. One feather is in line with the nock. Cyper. A cyper is an arrow guide. It consists of a small, saddle-shaped channel that is secured to the archer's bow hand, allowing for an archer to draw an arrow within the arc of their bow. Cypers come in handy when engaging in flight archery. The archer comes to full draw with a much shorter arrow. Because flight arrows are so short and small compared to ordinary target or war arrows, this is primarily because of the weight saving as well as aerodynamic considerations. A long draw ensures a greater amount of energy storage in the bow, and a short arrow ensures a stiffer spine and less weight. Being made from a variety of materials, namely woods, horn, ivory, and metal, a cyper could help an archer propel its small flight arrow greater distances. Leather was the material used for the strap, which secured the cyper to the archer's wrist. Flight archery competitions. Flight archery competitions are nothing new. Several archery fields were established all throughout the Ottoman Empire. These fields were designed and built specifically to host a variety of archery contests, especially flight archery competitions. Once such arrow fields were built in Istanbul, formerly Constantinople. After some decline in terms of a military instrument due mainly to firearms, interest in archery as a competitive sport remained strong under the conqueror of Constantinople, Muhammad II. After rebuilding the archery guild hall on the Meydan in Istanbul, the Sultan commissioned several tournaments, which he himself participated in, and was sure to establish prizes and incentives for participants. Several large stone columns stand in many places around Turkey. These columns mark the place where record shots had landed. These stones were works of art. Also, the stones are inscribed with the names of the archer and the distance of the shot. Modern flight archery competition. A typical shoot begins with a weigh-in. Most events are divided or categorized based on the draw weight of the bows. Common weight classes being the 35, 60, and unlimited. Event classes are also categorized based on the types of bows being used, compound, foot bows, recurve, etc. According to the World Archery Federation, the following bow classes are recognized: target recurve bow, conventional flight bow, American longbow, English longbow, compound flight bow, compound target bow, foot bow. After the weigh-in, several archers take turns shooting several arrows downrange. Next, the competitors must venture downrange to hunt out and mark their arrows, usually with small flags. A large, open, and flat area is required for a flight archery competition. The Bonneville Salt Flats in Utah host the Super Bowl of competitive flight archery. Flight archery records. Who holds the record for the longest shot? The furthest documented distance in Ottoman times was achieved by Toskoparan Iskander. The distance was recorded at 845.5 meters. This archer was apparently quite accomplished, as his name is recorded on arrow fields all throughout Turkey. In terms of modern records, they are just as impressive. The furthest with a handheld and pulled bow is 1,336 yards, or 1,222 meters, shot by Don Brown with an unlimited conventional flight bow in 1987. Thanks for watching.